Hi, I'm Stephanie and I'm an addict. Hi. Let's go ahead and open this with a moment of silence followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Welcome to the There's No Place Like Home Group Workshop. On behalf of the Cabin Fever Prevention Convention Committee, we would like to thank you for coming and helping us show that no addict need ever die from the horrors of addiction. The hotel has gone to great lengths to provide us with a clean and friendly space for our convention. We as participants need to act responsibly to ensure a welcome return in the future. The Convention Committee asks that you please keep in mind that your conduct is a direct reflection of NA. Please keep in mind that not everybody wants to stay up all night. We need to have peace and quiet in the hallways between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. and try to keep the noise in the rooms to a minimum. There will be no gambling or sleeping in the hospitality room or other public areas of the hotel. Access to all cabin fever activities requires you to wear a name badge. Individuals will be responsible for any damage done to their rooms. Checkout time is 12 o'clock noon. Please use the trash cans and ashtrays, and no pictures during meetings, and please ask at other times. In keeping with our traditions and steps of NA, we ask that you use the NA language of recovery in all that you say at these meetings. That is, you refer to our clean time as we refer to our disease as simply addiction, we identify as simply an addict, and we refer to our time in the program as clean time or recovery. This is not done to be different or better than or controversial. This is done because in our first step we have shifted the focus off the specific drug and onto the recovery process, leaving us with the single focus necessary for unity. Any labels which imply more than one disease dilute the focus, and some of the unity called for in the first tradition is lost. In keeping with our 11th tradition, we did not feel it appropriate to invite media attention. However, there is always the possibility that they will show up. If you are approached by a member of the media, please refer them to the registration table. Thank you. If you're reading, we want to ask that you come to the front when you read so that everybody can hear you. Okay, I've asked Donna to read Why Are We Here?
Hi, I'm Donna and I'm an addict.
Hey, Donna.
Before coming to the Fellowship of NA, we could not manage our own lives. We could not live and enjoy life as other people do. We had to have something different. We thought we had found it in drugs. We placed their use ahead of the welfare of our families, wives, husbands, and children. We had to have drugs at all costs. We did many people great harm, but most of all, we harmed ourselves. Through our inability to accept personal responsibilities, we were actually creating our own problems. We seemed to be incapable of facing life on its own terms. Most of us realized in our addiction we were slowly committing suicide, but addiction is such a cutting enemy of life that we had lost the power to do anything about it. Most of us ended up in jail or sought help through medicine, religion, and psychiatry. None of these methods was sufficient for us. Our disease always resurfaced or continued to progress until in desperation we sought help from each other in Narcotics Anonymous. After coming to NA, we realized we were sick people. We suffered from a disease from which there is no known cure. It can, however, be arrested at some point and recovery is impossible.
Thank you. I've asked Roseanne to come read Who Was an Addict.
I'm an addict. My name's Roseanne. Who's an addict? Most of us do not have to think twice about this question. We know. Our whole life and thinking was centered in drugs in one form or another, the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. We live to use and use to live. Very simply, an addict is a man or woman whose life is controlled by drugs. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death.
Thanks, Roseanne.
And I've asked Jesse to come read How It Works.
I'm Jesse, an addict.
Hey, Jesse.
How it works. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. 1, we admitted that we're powerless over our addiction. that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, properly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicted in one day, so remember, easy does it. There's one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of indifference or intolerance toward spiritual principles. 3 of these are indispensable: are honesty, open mind, and willingness. With these, we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the disease of addiction is completely realistic, for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. We feel that our way is practical, for one addict can best understand and help another addict. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society and everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from returning to active addiction is to not take that first drug. If you're like us, you know that one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. We put great emphasis on this, for we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we release our addiction all over again. Thinking of alcohol, alcohol is different from other drugs, has caused a great many addicts to relapse. Before we came to NA, many of us viewed alcohol separately, but we cannot afford to be confused about this. Alcohol is a drug, period. We are people with the disease of addiction who must abstain from all drugs in order to recover.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks to everyone that read, and thank you everyone for being here. The committee has selected 2 people to speak for us today, and we're going to start with Ed I.
I'm an addict called Ed. And I'm tripping a little bit, so I've got a little cheat sheet here to try and help keep me in line. But I should be grateful for getting asked to do this, and I probably will be after I'm done. But what I am grateful for and honored to do is to talk to you about my home group. You know, because all the people that they could have picked to do it or whatever, it makes me feel pretty privileged, and I love them. First of all, I want to start out by saying that you know, I've had 4 different home groups, and all of them's been small, and I've been able to find recovery anywhere that I've went to. You know, and I want to try to do this in a manner that it doesn't seem like I'm picking on other groups or something like that, you know, because I believe that, you know, where I'm at right now in my recovery is part of it is my home group, and part of it is me and what they've been teaching me, you know. But I'll start with, you know, I moved to the Mid-Mo area from Lebanon about 3 years ago, and I couldn't get with the whole big group thing. You know, it just intimidated me, and I was nervous to share. I've always had a hard time with sharing, and I don't know, you know, as I kept disqualifying myself, you know, I kept getting sicker and sicker, and didn't call a sponsor. I wasn't calling people. I wasn't putting forth the effort to get what Columbia had to offer. And it was getting to the point that I was just like, all right, I'm not going to do NA no more. I'm going to hang out at home, and I'm just not going to get high. And I got sick as hell. And about 2 cabin fevers ago, I think it was 2 ago, I had a friend that lives in Chicago now. And he called me, and he said, are you going to go to cabin fever? And I was like, no, man, I'm thinking I'm not going to do the NA thing no more, man. I'm just going to do it with church. And we all know how that works. But nevertheless, he said, I'll tell you what, if I'm coming all the way from Chicago, I think you can bring your ass 1 hour from Columbia down here to cabin fever. And I was like, whatever. So I came down here, and I met some folks from Mexico. And we got talking about, and believe it or not, we make wisecracks about me and my little fishing problem that I have, but they kept telling me, just wait till you get to Mexico, and they fish up there too, and when cabin fever was over, I went to Mexico, and I wasn't disappointed. So when I first showed up at Mexico, my addiction is constantly telling me that I don't fit in, and y'all don't like me, and trying to disqualify me. And people were standing outside. They hugged me when I came in, and they hugged me when I left, and they told me that I love me. And that's a big deal, because I need to be held by the hand sometimes and dragged through this deal. There was no question what needed to be my home group anymore. It felt real close to Lebanon, and I was comfortable with it, and that's kind of how that's kind of how I wound up in Mexico and how it became my home group. I believe in making a commitment to be at your home group. Because if I keep hopping around to different groups and different groups and different groups and don't pick a home group, I'm always a visitor. And I went in there and I shared what was going on in my life. And I had this stuff that I remember sharing that I didn't think I was ever going to be able to get over. And this couldn't have been but first or second month that I was going there. And this guy caught me after the meeting, and he said, so what's your fucking problem? And I copped to it, you know what I mean? And I told him what was going on. And I don't think it's necessarily a getting picked on situation, you know what I mean? But if we don't help each other and pull the covers on each other's shit, how are we ever going to get any better, you know what I mean? And that night, whenever I told him what was going on, that started the healing process for me. And that's kind of the way that it goes up there, We've got a lot of respect. I've got a lot of respect for those that came before me, to make it possible to have me this kind of new way of life. And because I couldn't have done it if somebody hadn't have done it before me, Everything that I have is not original, My home group has NA sponsors. It's got NA sponsors. It's got NA sponsors. It's got NA sponsors. And we go to our meetings, we work steps and traditions, and we practice the principles in all of our affairs. We encourage everybody to participate in the group conscience. And that's a big deal to me. Anywhere that I've been before, there's not that many people that'll show up at the group conscience, and I thought that I had found myself a perfect home group or whatever with no quarrels or anything like that, and this guy brought up, well, okay, let's just have a group inventory. And I think like 20 or 25 people showed up at that group inventory. And that just blows me away, And there was really no arguments, so to speak, in the whole deal, at all. And what little bit of friction that there was got resolved within a very short amount of time. And I think that's because we work steps and traditions, and implement it into our life. At the meetings, it is it's an atmosphere of recovery, and here a while back, a big issue for me is that a lot of places that I've been, and I love kids, don't get me wrong, but it is a hard issue, and I always wanted to see how is this issue ever going to get fixed, but I've been at meetings where it's a recess, and people don't take care of their kids, and what happens tonight whenever the newcomer or the addict that's still suffering didn't get to hear what he needed to hear tonight, and he goes out and dies because somebody wasn't taking care of their kids. And that's been implemented into our format that you follow when you chair. And there's another room for the kids, and it's kept as a serious thing. There's a chair in the middle of the room that sits empty, and that's for the addict that died today because they didn't have this program. And it's not a fun and games thing for me, and I need that seriousness in the home group, But I remember when I first came to NA, this guy told me that, what it was I shared that, how do you have fun? How do you do this deal? And this dude told me, he's like, man, you gotta get in there, and you gotta know you get to know these people well enough, that you even know what they got in their refrigerator. And I couldn't tell you what everybody's got in their refrigerator, but I know where he was going with that, man. I've digged in there, and my home group makes it easy for you. Every weekend there is something going on. We road trip to other meetings. We fellowship at each other's houses. Can't overlook the thing. It's a big deal for me that I got a buddy that I fish with. And little secret that I'm going to let some of you home group members in on that you didn't know before, sometimes we talk about recovery when we fish. When we go to, these other conventions and stuff, we hang together, and by getting so intertwined with my home group, I've gotten to know the people they know and the people they know. They've gotten to know the people I know and the people that they know. And man, when I come to these first few years that I came to Cabin Fever, this thing was so overwhelming for me. And today, I feel home here, Y'all are like me, and that's great, We contact each other regularly, and what I mean by that is, people's got, I remember when Joe had a stress test, and he had to get stents put in his heart, you know what I mean? And we keep in contact, we love one another, and have a true concern for what is going on with it in each other's lives, I got to talk a little bit about all the shit that I've watched them go through in this last year. Because I haven't had to go through what they've had to go through, but they have paved the way for me that whenever I have to cross these roads, that I know that somebody's been there before me, and it'll keep me from having to go get high. There's been a lot of deaths, and I've watched them come in and share. And, I remember saying I can identify with the feelings, but I'm not in your shoes. I don't know how to deal with that, And I told them that I would piss on a spark plug for them if that would make it any better, And I would. But I'm just amazed, it's completely ridded me of any reservations, the pain that my home group has felt this last year. And the way that we've all bonded together to help each other get through the whole deal. It amazes me, man. I can't sit up here and put into words in a short amount of time what I feel about my home group, but I don't feel that way with my family, and my family was not dysfunctional. I was the black sheep in my family, I'm at home when I'm at my home group, and if for some reason that I can't make it to the meeting, I'm scared to death that I missed something, I get something every single time that I go. And if I don't get something, it's not their fault, it's mine. Because at that point in time, I'm closed-minded, or I don't want to hear that, or whatever, I don't know. Drawing a blank here. But the moral of the story is that, I went in and I shared my feelings, and I seeked out the help, and they made it easy for me, you know, and I think a home group ought to. We hug every newcomer that comes in there, and I realize that if you're in a great big place, that's hard to do because you don't know who is and who ain't. But, you know, maybe if you ain't sure if they're new, maybe you ought to hug them, you know. And I don't know. You know, I'm drawing a blank, and I realize I ain't shared that much time, but I don't know. That's it. I love you all. Thanks for me.
Now we're going to hear from Chris.
I'm an addict. My name's Chris. Hey, Chris. Is everybody having a good time this weekend? Oh, yeah! Cool. I'm a little under the weather, so please forgive me if I have a brand new, fresh glass of water here. And thanks, Ed, for sharing. I want to try to make this actually a workshop. So I'm not going to talk for a long time. I want to hear what you guys have to say and want to hear some solutions and good things that you guys have to say as well. So rather than, hearing just two people share, I'd rather hear like a lot, because no one person has a corner on the market on good ideas on recovery, that's for sure. And lots of different ways to do it. As long as we end up at the same place, does it really matter? It doesn't. I don't feel like it does. There's probably like 100 people here, maybe 50, 75, something like that. If you don't mind, do a little exercise with me. Everybody knows, that a group conscience compared to an actual meeting is pretty small, generally, right? And I've always wondered, with all the people that attend NA meetings, where are those other people's home groups? I don't know, has anybody else wondered that before? There's probably 75 people here. Everybody that's got a home group, raise their hand. Right on. I love it. That's awesome. That's probably why you're here. Because you're involved in NA. You know what I mean? You have... NA has given you a life that's worth living today, most likely, and you want to give back. That's why I keep showing up. When I got to NA, it was suggested, I found NA in a treatment center through an H&I meeting, that they, a guy named Terry from down in Lebanon would bring in this H&I meeting to our treatment facility twice a week, and that's how I was introduced to NA. So, just kind of a funny story, like when you're getting ready to get out, I guess they have. This is an endorsement of those things or whatever, or those facilities or whatever. This is just my experience. This is kind of funny, as you go out, the day before or whatever, they sit down and have a little. Powwow with however many therapists or whoever they are. And, my buddy was getting out the day before. When they did his little meeting, he came back and I said, well, how'd it go? What happened? And he goes, well, they said I need 5 to 7 meetings a week. And I was like, that's probably right. You probably need that many, is what I was thinking in my mind, So, the next day was mine, and I was getting out the very next day after that, and they only said I needed 2 meetings a week. 2 meetings a week is what they told me that I needed. I was like, man, I had these people snowed down, period. They didn't know me. I was still hiding, I was still manipulating, I was still wanting to be somebody that they didn't think that I was. After all, like it says in our basic text, we do want to look good. It's not like we want to look like crap all the time. But, which is what's inside and the way I feel, or the way I felt at that time. So I used that, unfortunately. When I got out, I used that as an excuse to be apart from you guys, you know? I went to meeting, the day I got out, and attended meetings regularly, I did. But because of the way that I used specifically, I thought I was different, and I wanted to be different, and I was looking for an excuse to be different, and I wanted to, they told me in treatment, out of 100 people that were here, maybe 2 may be clean in a year or something like that. Who knows what it was. And they personally said to me, he goes, you may not be clean in a year, and probably you won't, and I took that as a personal challenge, So I was like, well, I'll show that, blankety blank, I'm gonna, he doesn't know me. In fact, he didn't, because I didn't share anything about myself about myself while I was in treatment. I was hiding still. But due to the specific way that I used, I would think of myself as different. I wanted to be different. I wanted an excuse so I could leave, so I wouldn't have to deal with myself, so I wouldn't have to feel what's inside, which was the ultimate truth that I knew deep down was the truth, that I never could use successfully. I never had, and I never will, and I knew that. I never used like anybody else. I just knew it. I knew it, and that's what made me an addict, and that was the truth that I was denying. But that was just what they told me when I was in treatment. That was just a tool for me to use. Well, people that used different from me, I would cut them down, in my head. When they would share, the things that we know to be true today, like suggestions, going to meetings on a regular basis, getting a home group, working the steps, getting a sponsor, and being of service. I would sit there and go, whatever, man, you're not even an addict. In fact, that 7 tradition you guys are collecting, you're probably taking it and using with it afterwards. That's what I was thinking. Seriously. I was highly skeptical. And so, they call them suggestions, but I guess if you were in I was listening to a speaker tape the other day, and I guess if, say you're skydiving and you have your parachute on, and they suggest that you pull that ripcord at 5,000 feet or whatever it is, or 15,000, or whatever feet it is, you probably should do it, because if you don't, the results are fatal, Well, those suggestions that they gave, I've come to realize that if I don't take those suggestions, the results are fatal, because I know that this disease kills. It's progressive, fatal, and chronic. It'll kill me if it's left untreated. And I thought that those suggestions were like an a la carte menu. I could just take them as I wanted. I would go to meetings regularly. I would work the steps on my own. What did I need somebody to tell me how to do it for, right? I mean, one of the most insane thoughts is, it's like, okay, we get here completely broken, sparks flying, crashing, burning, flaming halt, right? And then all of a sudden we get 30 days and we think we got it figured out and we don't need anybody. That was me. And I didn't want anybody in my life because I thought I had it all figured out, and I was pretty smart. So I figured I didn't need to seek out somebody else's experience. So I felt apart from. Not a part of, I was apart from. I felt alone. I saw people showing up early, going out after the meetings, attending functions, having laughs, going to conventions, traveling. I wasn't part of that because I was too cool. I was too cool. It mentions in the basic text that terminal hip and fatal cool. I think that's what it says, something like that. That was me. That was me because I didn't want to conform. Because if I conformed, that means that I had to place the responsibility for my disease squarely on my shoulders and not on you guys for making me feel different, I would identify myself as, I'm Chris and I'm a junkie. I'm Chris and I'm a dope addict. Or I'm Chris and whatever, I didn't want to feel like I was, because if I identified as an addict like you guys, then that means I have to like completely buy into this thing, And I swear to God, that's what I was thinking. Like those values or those morals or those things that were inside of me that I was clinging on to that I thought were so sacred, those things were worth holding on to. Whatever, I mean, those things are so undesirable. It's insane now looking at it going, well, it's insane looking at it going, that's what I was thinking, but that's my experience, That's where I am today, and that's where I had been. And I felt apart from. And, through a series of events, thought I could have friends, from before, because I got clean, went right back to the same town. Thought I could have friends from before, and then my new friends. Well, which is dangerous. And these things that I'm talking about are not suggested, so please, don't do what I've done. But I have stayed clean, since November 12th of 1989, though. But so it's been around a while, but that's just my experience. I would take, I was the little sober chauffeur guy, I'd take out my old friends. And seriously, because they'd pat me on the back, and go, attention. Just like last night on that stage. No, that was attention. That was pretty good.
I know that's right.
I'll drink to that. Water. I like attention. So people were patting me on the back saying, if you ever drink, I'm going to kick your ass. That's what they'd say. And I'd go, you are my true friend. I love you. And pretty soon they stopped patting me on the back. They stopped doing those things. And I was alone, saw a connection, and had to make a choice. I was driving, 4 other people were with me. It was 11:30 on a Friday night. And there was the choice. I was holding money. Could have very easily done it. Didn't even mention that I was leaving to those guys. I just turned around and walked out the door and went to the Friday night midnight meeting at the Chautauqua Center, and which is a little hole-in-the-wall basement place with lots of bugs crawling around and dirty mattresses on the floor, and that's where the meetings used to be on Friday nights at midnight. But we didn't care. We didn't care. Because when I got to that meeting, I felt I had surrendered. That's when I knew that I couldn't do it that way anymore. I was fighting, and I was trying to do anything but be a part of you guys, I knew I couldn't do it the way I was, but I wasn't sure that I wanted you guys to be a part of my life either. And so the day after that, I got a sponsor, I got a home group, and I started my first step that day. So I started taking some suggestions, What made me feel a part of more than anything was being asked, hey, do you want to open up the meeting? Giving me a key. I'd show up a half an hour early, and I would be there by myself. I'd set up 60, 70 chairs. My first home group was a freedom group. It was 6:30 at the Church of Christ in Columbia, which that church is no longer there. The oldest home group in Columbia at that time. I think it still is. But Man, that was awesome. I mean, that was awesome. I was setting up chairs. I was laying out literature. I was making coffee. When people would come in, I would hug them, and we'd get to know each other. And that's where I felt like I was a part of you guys. That's where I felt like when I belonged, that I wasn't alone anymore. And I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. And, because after all, if we don't, like those secrets, if we don't talk about them, the way I think about it sometimes, if we don't talk about them, well, it didn't really happen, did it? Just act like it didn't happen, So, my life for the past 6 months, it's just like I didn't want to talk about it, so it just didn't really happen. But then I started talking about it, and started working the steps, and my sponsor quickly straightened me out. It's like, you're not different. You're not better than or less than, but you're, in the true principle of anonymity, you're nameless. You're faceless. The state of bearing no name. You're an addict in here. And I wish that I could have felt like that, but I didn't, because very rarely did I ever feel like I was equal to. I was always less than or better than, and I'm sure that everybody can relate. But it was told to me quickly, that you attend your home group, period. If an immediate family member dies or you're over 150 miles away, is that an excuse to miss your home group? That was told to me. It's like it was also told to me that you fit your life to NA, not NA into your life whenever it's convenient. Around Monday Night Football, X-Files, Cold Case, or CSI, or whatever it is, that we choose to, make more important. It's like, so it was also told to me to be a part of, and get involved. And, it mentions in our basic text that, what's a home group for? It's to create an atmosphere of recovery for an addict who has yet to find this program, so when they walk in the door, they can be welcome, feel at home, so they're not different than, less than, and they can, just like if you were hosting, a party at your house and you had people over that you didn't really know, but they were there at your house, would you ignore them? No. Well, why would you do it at your home group? My sponsor would tell me. So, those were things, that I just had to learn, because when I got here, what I knew about living almost killed me. I didn't know anything, but yet I thought I knew everything. So the things that I knew, I didn't know anything. So I had to be retaught everything. And it was just a hard process for me to realize, that when I didn't know shit, didn't know anything. So, another, thing it says in our basic text is that sponsorship initially is the responsibility of a home group. A lot of people don't know that, My home group now is Quarter Till NA. It meets Quarter Till 6, as the name implies, on Thursday nights in Columbia. And it is a literature study meeting. And we read out of that book every single week, and or an IP. And it helps me keep in touch. It just helps me keep in touch. And creating that atmosphere of recovery has got to be first in a home group. It just does for me, the way I believe. What if, like when I first showed up, what if that first meeting that I showed up to, they were bickering over whether or not they were going to read out of another fellowship's literature or our literature, I'd have been going, is this NA or where am I? See, I told you guys this shit didn't work. I'm out of here. It's probably what I'd have done. Who knows? Or I would have tried something different. I might have tried, church, because I didn't want to let those guys in treatment I didn't want to let them know that they were going to be right, that I wasn't going to stay clean. And I feel very strongly about, home group attendance, being involved in a home group, group conscience. We're there, my sponsor would, suggest to me that, there's 3 meetings at each meeting. The meeting before the meeting, and then the meeting after the meeting. Attend all 3 is what he would always tell me every single time. Because I would want to show up late, leave early. Well, as newcomers come in today, I have fun running them down in the parking lot. Hey, where are you going? Give them that hug, man. Where are you going? Come on back in here. Let's talk. Let's go hang out. Let's go get some coffee. Let's go get some food. Let's do something. I just feel that, it's where I call home. It is truly where I call home. And it's where those people that are in that home group get to know me. And I can't hide. And I feel like I make a difference, if that makes sense. I feel like I make a difference just by showing up. At my home group just the other night, the weather was horrible. I have a 4-wheel drive, so it's not that horrible anymore for me, but it used to be horrible because I had a car that would not get around, and I understand how that is for people, but it was 5:40, and I was the only person at the meeting. And my home group's small. I mean, it's like 10 to 12 people average, and that's just the way it is. So I was figured, I'll be the only one here. That door's going to stay open. I'll just read this basic text for a while, and I've done this before. It's no big deal. Well, then, in a flurry of like 2 minutes, like 10 people just right through the door, and we have a meeting. And I felt like I made a difference. That door was open, I feel like I belong when I have a home group. I feel like you guys are part of my family today when I share with you guys. You guys are closer to me than my family. That's what's so wild. I mean, sick addicts helping another sick addict learn how to live, and you guys know more about me today than most people will in my whole life, and it's just an intimate relationship today that I don't take lightly. And I think it was very nice, and it was an honor to be asked to speak for this subject for the 4th time. I don't know why. I've spoken about this 4 times here. I guess, it's just the way it is, that's just the way it is. That's okay. I guess I have some things, that are, it's something that I truly believe in. And maybe it shows, to people that attend meetings with me then, and maybe that's, if one person that was here that didn't have a home group, I hope, and you don't have a home group, hopefully I've made a difference, and maybe you can get one and be a part of this thing. And I don't ever want you all to feel like you're on the outside, experience the benefits that this program has to offer, and someday you'll be there for me when I need you. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
I'm Stephanie. I'm an addict. And I was not planning on sharing today, but wow. When I first got here and got my sponsor, on our initial talk about what she expected out of me, one of the main things is that I have a home group. And, I really didn't understand what a home group was or what was the point of a home group, but I did it because it was suggested of me, and I wanted to stay clean. So the first home group I got, I just kind of picked it because she said you got 30 days to find one, and I didn't want her to fire me, so I picked a home group and I started participating in group conscience, which I didn't understand anything. ASCRCM, all these little initials, and I'm like, what is going on? These people are crazy. And but I just kept going back and asking a lot of questions and a lot of questions and a lot of questions. I'm like, could you explain that for me? Could you tell me what that's about? And the people took the time to, no matter how many questions I had and no matter how long we stayed there, they explained it to me, and they told me what they told me about, the service structure of Narcotics Anonymous. And but I still never felt like the whole home group thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just never felt it, and it's because I wasn't at the right home group, and I made a decision probably after I had about 9 months clean to change home groups, and it was the best decision I made, because switching home groups, I started to feel the importance of a home group in my life. I felt connected, I felt plugged in, I felt energized by this group of individuals, and I felt like I got to connect with them like never before, like I've never felt before. And and I love the way that my home group reaches out to newcomers. And at the beginning of our meeting, every meeting, a home group member shares about sponsorship, and a home group member shares about what is a home group. And I love that because I know how important it was for me being new to hear those things over and over again. And we just started making these newcomer packets with several IPs in it in the envelope that everybody can sign their name on to reach out to them. And I just love the way that we embrace the newcomer, and then also the unity that I feel with my home group members. We go on road trips to out-of-town meetings that are struggling or that aren't struggling. We just get together and go as a group, and we get to talk about recovery, and we get to talk about our lives, and we get to know each other better. And at the same time, we get to go to another meeting out of town, and it just feels really good to be a part of a home group. And, I feel like I have the best home group in the world. And I feel like, everybody feels that way about their home group, But, I didn't before. So if you don't feel like you have the best home group in the world, look for another home group, because for the longest time I just stayed with one home group, and I didn't realize that, oh yeah, I have choices. I can pick where I want to go to. And I don't know, I'm not feeling very good, and so I really don't have much of anything else to say. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you guys are here, and I think that's all.
Thanks, Cathy.
Let's listen to it.
Let's open the podium.
Okay. Let's do that. If anybody wants to, we have until 3:45. If anybody else wants to come up and share about their experience with the home group, or thank you.
Okay.
My name's Cathy. I'm an addict. My home group is very important to me because that is the foundation of Narcotics Anonymous. That is where I go to have a voice in what goes on in Narcotics Anonymous. So, again, as everybody said, when I first got here, that is what drew me there, was that I felt at home. I felt comfortable. I felt a part of, because these people gave me some responsibility to do, whether it be making coffee or they trusted me. And that's where I started getting some self-esteem and gave back a little bit to Narcotics Anonymous what was being given to me. That's where I started service. We at our home group we set boundaries. It's up to the women. If something's not going according to traditions or according to behaviors that are healthy, recovery behaviors, the women approach the women, the men approach the men. We feel strongly that we want to focus on recovery. Not that you can't go to the home group and share how you're feeling, because, as was said, a lot of us have experienced emotional deaths, events in our lives, and feel safe enough to go to a home group, our home group, and share, be vulnerable, take that risk. That was a workshop today, too. And we get to know about each other at our home group because we feel safe. And when people call us on our shit, it's easier sometimes to balk on that, but step back and look that they're saying it out of love. They're not trying to condemn or point or judge. As was said, we did inventory, and many years ago, our group did a function, and our group conscience took it away and gave it to the area. And I was not in agreement with that, but you know, that's what a group conscience is. If you ask your higher power to be there, that conscience hopefully will be accepted and dealt with if that's how you vote. And I don't always have to agree with everything that goes on, but I have to trust in that process. And that's where I do it, is at my home group. We do things that, and ask the newcomer to be a part of, because I think all of us experience and remember how it was when we walked into those rooms and felt empty and alone. I'm very proud to be a part of my home group, but that is where I truly, truly have a voice in Narcotics Anonymous, and that's why I encourage everyone to have a home group, to go there, be a part of that group conscience, and participate, because this is our fellowship. This is a we program, and we can't be a we if we're sitting on the sidelines. And that's all I got. Thanks. Love you.
Thanks, Cathy.
I'm Renee, I'm an addict. My home group is cold in the winter and hot in the summer, but it's my home group. My first home group was a large group, and I didn't connect with women right away. So I was kind of shy, but they said, come to Group Conscience. You coming? You coming? Coming to Group Conscience? They'd always announce it, at the meeting. So I said, okay, I better go and see what this is about. And they all got in there and argued and whatever, they did, and then they had these positions and so I asked, like she said, I asked what they were, what is this, what is that, what does H&I stand for, what does GSR stand for, what are all these acronyms that you guys are talking about? And I took a little position, literature coordinator. It was easy position for me, and it got me in there and out of some of my shyness. It was good for me. I think part of being the home group member is going to Group Conscience. Not always for some people, but I think it's important. And it reminds me of when this expression that people use when they say, you're preaching to the choir. It's like the preacher preaching to the choir. The choir is always there every Sunday, And when you're preaching to the choir, that's somebody who already is on the same page as you. So when I think of the choir, I want to be a member of the choir in NA. You know, I want to be a member of the choir. The people that care, the people that show up. That's where I want to be. My home group now is a small group, and the old home group, when I go there, they say, "Where have you been? Where are you? Are you okay?" Because they want to know where I have been. But I moved across town, and I found a different home group, and it is much smaller, but it's mine. It's my home group, you know. And because it only meets once a week, that gives me the opportunity to go to other meetings. And of course, if I have to miss it, which I do have to miss it every once in a while, then I don't get to go for a whole nother week. You know, then I'm on the phone with the home group members. Well, this is why I'm missing it, you know, or this is why, or I'll be late to group conscience. But home group members care about each other, and we vote on what goes on in the group. This group conscience takes about a half hour. I've been in group conscience that took 3, and everybody argued and stayed up late and stayed, you know, and this one is short and sweet, and I like it. I like that part of it. But there's, you know, and then there's one group in my old home group had a business meeting and then group conscience. And they present all the issues at the business meeting, and then they vote on them at group conscience because it's such a huge group, I guess, that they would have to do it that way. Right now, I just took a little treasurer's position, and it's so easy. It's real easy, but it's my responsibility, and I'm glad I have it. You know, in the beginning, I figured out pretty early on, and I think that if I had both feet in, and I had a position that required me to show up to group conscience and report how much literature we had, how much we needed to order, that I had both feet in, not one over here, both in, both feet in. And it was a lot harder to stray off and screw up when I had both feet in the middle rather than one over here and one in here. So the home group, I think, is an important thing, and she said what I was thinking, that if you don't have the best home group, then you can look for another one. There's a lot of good groups, and so, you know, it's your choice. I have the honor of being here at the convention with 2 newcomers, and one with just over a year, and that's an honor to me. You know, that's an awesome thing that you guys want to be here and soak up recovery. I'm glad to be here. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Okay, then let's go ahead and close. Thank you to everybody else who shared. After a moment of silence for the still suffering addict, let's close with the reversion story prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back, it works if you live it.
Yes.
He's got sisters who they're married. Yeah, I've got brothers with us.
Very proud of my home group members.